Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Now, as the residents of Gaza continue to count the cost of the genocide which started on October the 7th, 2023, what was Gaza is a question that everyone is asking. How was it? What was it to be part and parcel of this beautiful piece of land in Palestine, despite it being the largest open-air prison in the world? Well, a trailer up next is going to give you an idea of what it was prior to October the 7th that year. You can see, after October the 7th, not much has been the same for the residents of Gaza. But it has taken a few brave souls to really talk about the beauty of this place and what it has now become since the start of the genocide. Joining me now via Zoom, and of course we had connectivity problems with him on Friday, but Alhamdulillah, we finally got him again. Yousef Alhelou, who is a journalist and the director of this documentary titled The Phoenix of Gaza. Yousef, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah so much, shukran so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's an absolute pleasure. I mean, Yousef, of course, Golda Meir, the former Israeli Prime Minister, once claimed the land of Palestine as a people with no land and a land without any people. But you look at this documentary right here, you look at just the trailer and of course a documentary which is going to be screened in 2 days' time, is going to speak of it as being different. Gaza, how was it as a place prior to October the 7th?
Gaza was hustling and bustling. Palestinians have inhabited this land for centuries. We are the indigenous people of the land. You've got 2.3 million people live in the world's largest open-air prison, and more than half of the population are young people. There is so much creativity, innovation. Palestinians defy the Israeli occupation, the siege, the restrictions, and they beautified, I use this term, they beautified the prison. Because Gaza has no airport and seaport, Israel destroyed the airport in the year 2000, and we are banned for life to use our seaport to the outside world. And Israel controls what goes in, what goes out. It controls the airspace, controls the seawater, and Gaza is still under occupation. But when I was in Gaza in the summer of 2023, I spent 2 months there, and I was able to capture the gems and the beauty, rare aerial footage, and I talked to people, my family, my friends. I visited all the places that I missed. It was full of life. Palestinians, they love life. Palestinians are normal people. We have aspirations, we have dreams. We are the most educated people amongst the Arab nations in the Middle East. So Gaza has been always vibrant, full of life, full of spirit. And despite all the atrocities, despite all the frequent Israeli attacks and wars and onslaughts, and despite the recent genocide, Palestinians, they are trying to go back to normality now, and they are picking the shattered pieces of their lives.
Yousef, the one interesting fact, and of course this is sold to us by the Western media, was that Gaza under the leadership of Hamas is a dictatorship, is a oppressive regime, is one that is willing to suppress its people to the core. And this is the same Hamas that, of course, won an election back in 2005. And of course, it has, of course, its Al Qassam Brigade, and it's got its political bureau, which was led by, of course, the late Ismail Haniyeh. Why is there this obsession, and of course, somebody being in media like yourself, Yousef, this obsession from the West to drive this narrative that people in Gaza are living under this oppressive regime, and what happened after October the 7th, quote unquote, in the words of the Israelis, liberated the people of Gaza?
Well, colonialist powers, they always look for a justification. They look for a pretext to suppress the people under their occupation. So they are looking for a boogeyman. They are looking for any kind of pretext just to justify their attacks on Gaza, because they have been using Gaza as a testing ground, as a lab. They are testing the Western weapons, the Israeli weapons, American weapons on Gazans. So that's why they are provoking the Palestinians. They are squeezing Palestinians to the corner, to the bottleneck, in order for Palestinians to react and to respond, so that Israel keeps attacking, keeps testing its weapons on us. And they actually they supported Hamas in Gaza because they allowed Hamas to rule Gaza. This is something, a fact, because they have deepened the split between the Palestinian Authority, the secular party led by Abbas, who's residing in the West Bank, and they deepened the split by not allowing the election. We only had experience once in our lifetime election. It was a transparent, which brought Hamas to power. So Israel wanted to have two examples. Palestinians who live under the moderate, under the secular party Fatah, they have a nice life in the West Bank, whereas they are drawing a different parallel, nightmare, wars and destructions and suffering under the Islamic ruling party of Hamas. They always wanted to have those two examples. They always have been deepening the split. Gaza and the West Bank are totally separated, geographically separated. Palestinians in Gaza cannot go to the West Bank. West Bankers cannot come to Gaza. So that's why Israel wants to divide and rule Palestinians. Israel wants Palestinians, to pretend or to appear as oppressor, as violent people under its military occupation. That's why it's the provocation. It's playing the victim all the time. That's why, because they wanted the sympathy of the West. They wanted to extort Germany. They wanted to extort the world. We survived the Holocaust. Palestinians are violent. It's good. This kind of game. It's a game of victimhood. A game of being, the oppressed under the Palestinian side. Whereas Palestinians have been suffering ever since 1948. For the past 76 years, we have grievances. And unfortunately, the double standards and the hypocrisy of the West, they know these facts, but they are not siding with the Palestinians. This is the problem.
And to take into context, Yousef, prior to, of course, October the 7th, the residents of Gaza had gone through various attacks from Israel. And this, of course, rubbing salt into the wounds of an already open air prison where Israel controls the food it supplies, the water, and practically anything else that the residents of Gaza survive on. 2021, 2018 or 2017, then of course in 2012, and then in 2008. But yet the spirit of the people of Gaza continued to go ahead and really persevere in those difficult times. And looking at the trailer, and of course your documentary film is going to focus on that, how this spirit, it's probably a spirit that you won't find anywhere else in the world. Am I correct in saying that, Yousef?
Yes, Alhamdulillah. I think we are the chosen people. I think we managed to inspire the whole world. So many people around the world, they are sympathizing with the Palestinians because, we teach life. You lose your loved ones and you say, Alhamdulillah. You lose your house and you say, Alhamdulillah. We believe in destiny. We are believers. So many people converted. They reverted to the religion of Islam. And also, let's just also remind the listeners or the viewers that we have a Christian community in Gaza, and they coexist with us, and there is harmony, there is respect, and the Christian community in Gaza is one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. They're also suffering under Israel's occupation. So the Western media try to portray that people in Gaza, they are not enjoying the freedoms of worship, the freedom of expression. No place is perfect, to be honest. But I think it's the spirit, it's the high morale, the steadfastness, the resilience, the sumud. The Arabic word for the resilience is sumud. So we have experienced ingoing, frequent, endless oppressions, onslaughts, aggressions, military attacks, psychological attacks. Israel has been, mentally besieging the Palestinians. Israel has been imposing a digital blockade. Okay, they are not present inside Gaza, but they imposed a digital blockade, a digital naval blockade, by controlling everything, by placing surveillance equipments, by the balloons, by the cameras. They use robots to shoot at Palestinians. They use the latest technology to suppress and control Palestinians. Gaza is a Hunger Game. Have you watched that movie, Hunger Game?
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's typically the same. People are confined in a big prison with walls and wires and electricity and drones. So, and they are training us to adapt to this reality. But what we try to say, we are not going to live under this brutality and siege and occupation forever. That's why people are revolting. What happened on the 7th of October is a Prison Break. This is another film, another series. Prison Break. People are revolting. People are not accepting to live under this siege, under this prison. So that's why, alhamdulillah, I lost my sister. I lost a number of my nephews and nieces and cousins and relatives, my neighbors, my journalist colleagues. But, life goes on. And Israel will not able to break our will, and it's not going to break our spirit.
How has the genocide shaped the world's view on Palestinian solidarity? After the break, I continue my conversation with Yousef Alhelou, the producer and filmmaker of the documentary film which is coming up titled The Phoenix of Gaza. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with Yousef Alhelou, who is a journalist but also the director, filmmaker, producer of the upcoming documentary film titled The Phoenix of Gaza. Yousef, shukran so much for staying with us. Yousef, I want to come to South Africa. And of course, as a journalist, you were following very closely the International Court of Justice case that was happening. And it was, of course, led by our former Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor. When you saw this, comparing how South Africa, of course, had undergone its own apartheid, this very same year that, of course, the Nakba happened, how much did it, really conjure up those emotions to see South Africa really taking up this fight against Israel, given that there wasn't really any other country that was willing to have this guts to do what they're doing to the highest court of the land?
Well, we are grateful for the role of South Africa for pressing ahead with the ICJ case. And we understand that South Africa is under tremendous pressure to withdraw the file. The Palestinians appreciate the South African solidarity. And we have learned a lot from your struggle. But the situation in Palestine, apartheid in Palestine, is much worse than what you experienced. You have walls in Gaza as high as 5-6 meters. There is segregation, not between Jewish and Palestinians and Christians. There's so much details going on there. If you are not Jewish, you are not allowed to use certain road. You are not allowed. Even Black Jews are segregated. They're not allowed to be buried in white cemeteries. If you are a foreigner, then you can enjoy a little bit of luxury. You can move around, but you are Palestinian, West Banker, or Jerusalemite from Jerusalem. Sometimes, if there are no restrictions, if there is no checkpoint, you could have reached the other city in the West Bank maybe in 20, 30 minutes. But sometimes, most of the time nowadays, because of the bureaucracy and restrictions, it takes hours. And if you've seen how Palestinians, they are being driven into the kind of, metal barriers, like driven like sheep, and they are restricted, they are abused, and they are turned away, they are abducted, detained. There is so much oppression, there is so much injustice. But and again, we are grateful, and that's why Palestinians, they consider our comrades in South Africa, our partners in this. And of course, we never forget Nelson Mandela's statement: "The freedom of the world is incomplete without the freedom of the
Sure.
Palestinian people."
Yeah, without a doubt, and it's of course a quote that resonates amongst many South Africans. Yeah, um, the world's view, of course, and Yousef, leading up to October the 7th, I think one can actually put it out that there were large sections of the world that had the sense of ignorance. The sense of, well, we're not going to take any sides. It's a war that we don't want to get involved in. It's one that, of course, it's based on religion, where, of course, this thought of colonialism and settler colonialism at the same time was just completely ignored. But after October the 7th, I mean, pictures of children being under the rubble, the deaths of women, the deaths of children, that has changed everything. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about the role of the media. But looking at the way the world has now viewed this genocide, it's changed a lot, hasn't it? Because it is now, as many people would say, the first live-streamed genocide that is occurring, and we see that in many of the world's TV channels. But also the role of people taking videos, seeing what had happened in Rafah, seeing what had happened to the abduction of Dr. Abu Samra when he was just taken by the Israeli occupation forces standing in front of the hotel. That spirit of resistance has been displayed to the world, hasn't it?
Indeed, yes. And part of my film focuses on the humanity. I'm trying to humanize Palestinians.
Sure.
We are not aliens coming from the moon. Israel's propaganda and fabrication are exposed. The world doesn't believe them anymore. Extorting the world and shedding crocodile tears doesn't work anymore. The world is sick from, Israel claims to be the only democracy in the Middle East, to have the most moral army in the world. And people, what they saw, in the past 500 days, they say it's the most immoral army in the world, because you cannot be human being shooting kids in the head. Snipers, they enjoyed shooting kids, and civilians, they enjoyed torturing Palestinians. It's unbelievable that these people, they think they're playing PS5, PlayStation. They put their headphone, they also played loud DJ, playing, dancing, and putting the ammunition in the tanks and shooting and killing. I can't believe these people are psychopath people. They are abnormal people. Like, you cannot be a human being when you enjoy killing civilians and children and say that this is for self-defense. The world is waking up. There's awareness. People can no longer tolerate these human rights violations.
And the importance to that, Yousef, on the humanizing of the people of Gaza, because your trailer speaks of it, and I'm sure your movie is going to speak of it. I mean, they're just enjoying their meals. I see the beautiful kapsa being cooked, and I had an opportunity to eat it at work, and it's a beautiful Arabic dish. The baklava, the kunafa, all of these beautiful foods. But it's not just the foods; it's
the social,
it's the culture. History. Yeah, I mean, you see guys playing, the Palestinian national football team. There's a football team there.
Yeah, the football.
Exactly. The beaches. Exactly. And I mean, that just shows that there's a heritage in Gaza that has been created by the people so that they can have a life despite this blockade by the Israelis.
Indeed. We are proud of our identity. We are proud of our cultural heritage. We are proud of, we use the universal language of art and music and all the beautiful things, because we need to, show the world that we have hobbies, but these hobbies are suppressed by Israel's occupation. Can you imagine, like in the 21st century, that Palestinian in Gaza sailors, they are banned, they are denied to have surfing boards, to use them on the Mediterranean Sea of the seashore of Gaza. So many things, so many items are banned. At some point, chocolate was banned. Like, it's just the smallest details. You cannot understand what kind of world we live in. Israel justifies everything for security, everything that Palestinians, they don't deserve, and they keep us on diet, just not to die, and they keep distorting the facts, and they keep appropriating our meals. They say falafel is an Israeli meal. They say the watermelon is an Israeli fruit. They say the donkey is Israel's national animal. They use our traditional embroidery clothing. They use our kufiyah, and they have kufiyah with the David Star. we can't imagine what's going on. Is that because you don't have history? You are trying to destroy our history and identity. That's why they destroyed all of the historical sites in Gaza. 250 and 60 historical sites wiped out, destroyed. Al Omari Mosque is 1,500 years old structure. The 700-year-old Pasha Palace, 700 Hammam al-Samra, the Ottoman Hammam. They destroyed all the historical sites. But we are staying. We are not going to vanish.
Yeah. Yousef, you've mentioned something quite interesting. And of course, last year, there was the anti-apartheid conference that happened here in South Africa. And we had a Reverend Munter Isaac, somebody you would know quite well, of course, who leads the Christian community within Gaza. And when I interviewed him, one of the interesting aspects he mentioned was the solidarity that they're seeing from the world, but also this a community that was in Gaza, and now it's being viewed from across the world because there's been this selling of the idea that Gaza is strictly an Islamic state, but there's more religions there. There's of course Christianity, and this community that came together really was something that has inspired the rest of the world, and that's special, isn't it? And tagging on to what Reverend Isaac had said, that Gaza is one, this community is one, and when the genocide started, everyone was coming together to help each other just to survive.
That's correct. And 3 churches in Gaza opened the door for Palestinians to seek shelter. And Israel bombed those 3 churches. And this shows that Israel has no regard to Christians. It has no regards to civilians. It considers all Palestinians subhumans. It considers all the Palestinians of Gaza as a hostile entity. It just does not differentiate between a civilian or a fighter or a Fatah or Hamas. All Palestinians in Israel's eyes are the enemy, unfortunately, and the world is not intervening. We know the hypocrisy, the double standards. As I mentioned, we are the most educated people across the Arab world. And nowadays, because Israel destroyed Gaza's 7 universities, and it destroyed hundreds of schools, but because we are eager to learn, our children in Gaza, they receive education at tents, at destroyed schools, on the soil, on the ground. There are many things not available, the caravans, the tents, but we are not going to give up because, Trump's idea to force Palestinians to leave is not going to work. Palestinians are not going to become refugees again after the 1948 Nakba. Because this is the land of Palestinians, and they refuse to live anywhere. We reject the notion that Palestinians cannot live because Gaza is uninhabitable, unlivable. But here we go. Palestinians are one unity. And even West Bankers, of course, we understand why there is little kind of support because they are under the oppression of the the Israeli occupation, and because of the security collaboration provided by the Palestinian Authority, a divide and rule game. But we understand also the masses across the world, the Muslims, the Arabs, the Christians, the atheists, all Palestinians agree that Palestinians are under oppression. People now know the facts. They know the truth.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Yousef Alhelou. We're going to be talking the role of media in its coverage of the genocide in Gaza, especially those early days. Yousef was on the ground when, of course, the first wave of attacks occurred by Israel. Do stay tuned. I'll have more for you after the break. Welcome back, Yousef. Again, shukran so much for staying with us. Yousef, you were there first few days of the genocide, and whenever I speak to people who had covered the first few days of the genocide, I think a lot of what they mention is obviously you had your commercial media outlets, and I'm going to specifically talk about Al Jazeera, Al Arabi Television, TRT, and they really spoke about just when will be our last minute, when will be our live crossing, and it was always the case with them. When you were covering it, Yousef, talk to us about it. Just, obviously in the trailer it shows you, of course, on top of one of the apartment buildings in Gaza, and just behind you there's one that's destroyed. Talk to us about that, and just how did you able to manage it along with family members of yours during what was a really difficult first few days of this genocide?
Oh, just want to clarify something. I wasn't present in Gaza during
Okay.
the genocide. That clip, I shot it when I was visiting Gaza in the
Sure.
summer 2023 because I was anticipating something to happen because I missed being a reporter on the ground. And I kept that vest for over 10 years, the press vest and the helmet. And because we got used to these kind of repeated Israeli attacks and wars and onslaughts in Gaza, so it just kind of like it's like I've got the sixth sense. I didn't expect that to happen, but at some point, Palestinian journalists they have a duty, they have a role to play. But I was lucky to spend 2 months there, and only after 1 month returning to London, this genocide started. But all of my family there, my journalist colleagues, I reported on the first Israeli genocide war, the second Israeli all-out aggression, and there was 2014. But even I'm away from Gaza, I feel that my spirit, my soul is there. I would like to be with my family there to report, just to comfort them, because what they have experienced in the last 16 months is unbelievable. Israel unleashed hell on earth. They dropped tons and tons of bombs, the latest technology. There was a military bridge, continuous bridge from the States, from Europe to Israel, even from Britain, surveillance planes. But reporting on a distance also meant that I had and still have a duty, a role to play. My social media accounts, you know, flourished, and I have so many followers. That's why I'm grateful to connect with so many people around the world.
Yousef, the role of the journalists that were in Gaza, I mean, just the fact that they were able to cover everything and bring you these reports, and it wasn't just done with a camera and a mic, a lot of it was done on the phone. Some as young as 19, 20 years old. I mean, one of the youngest journalists, Plestia Alakat, was there covering it, and she was just one of those that were just thrown in. We've got Ahmed Gunaim, who stays here in South Africa, a journalist also who covered the first few parts. He was just a content creator, but he became a journalist on the ground to give the truth. This comes at a time where Western media was showing a sort of different narrative, a narrative that was totally against that of the citizens of Gaza. How important were those journalists really in making sure that the truth was being told, and that while this genocide was being live streamed, they were able to deliver this information to the public?
Yes, Israel banned the entry of foreign journalists, so local journalists they found themselves obliged to report non-stop. Even some of them they lost their loved ones, they lost their houses, but they continued to report. Um, Also, they lacked the minimum equipment to report. They lacked the internet. That's why eSIM was very effective when people from abroad suggested the idea. And I remember at the end of the war, people were tagging Elon Musk to provide e-satellite for the Palestinians in order to report. But we know the hypocrisy. Also, they lacked helmets and vests. There are many things that they lacked. Not only they had to worry about their safety, but about the safety of their loved ones. And even influencers found themselves obliged to report, to use their platform. There is something important I wanted to convey is that every single Palestinian in Gaza who has got a smartphone has become a citizen journalist.
Sure.
Thanks to social media, thanks to the revolution of the internet, people they couldn't just let stories buried. Everybody was filming, everybody was waiting for the right time to have access to Wi-Fi or to eSIM cards, and they were reporting continuously. And many of those young people, such as Aboud, was reporting from Jabalia, and so many other young people, because they felt they had to do something. They felt they had to expose these crimes. They felt they can do something, and they won the hearts and minds of the world.
Yousef, and to that point, of course, this was important because the narrative pushed by the West, of course, especially when you seen the news agencies in of course the United Kingdom and the United States, when guests were brought about, of course, the words of terrorist attack, oppressive regimes happening in Gaza, And a lot of people had changed that narrative to say, well, do you understand what Palestinians in Gaza had been going through? How important whoever the representatives were, in whether or not, of course, the actual presenters were willing to take that side, but if the audience were listening, that they could understand the Palestinian side. How important was that in narrating the actual Palestinian side of things for educational purposes?
I think we won the online battle. I think the Palestinian narrative somehow managed to gain some acceptance in the West because we have grievances, and the world could see the brutality of the Israeli side. We are the victims, and the Israelis are the victimizers. Even the hostages, the captors, the Israeli soldiers who were captured during the 7th of October. Can you imagine a captive or a hostage kisses the
Yes.
head of his captors? That shocked the world. Like the people couldn't understand what's going on. It's because the treatment, they received good treatment. Of course, we're not advocating for abducting anybody, but what the world saw is something very human. Whereas Israel, on the other side, torturing Palestinians, abusing them, even as they are being released. They prevent them from celebrating their release. They attack their families to prevent them from celebrating the reunion of their loved ones. So many people are in administrative detention without a trial or charge. You've got 12,000 Palestinian political prisoners, and those ones without a charge are abductees. They are hostages because they were abducted from their houses in the middle of the night in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem. So the world is sympathizing with us because they can see truly who is the victim and who is the victimizer.
One final question before we go to the break, Yousef. You mentioned, of course, and it was widely publicized, that foreign journalists were not allowed into Gaza to cover the genocide. You then, of course, had last year in September where the Al Jazeera office was raided and shut down by the Israeli occupation forces, and we were able to speak at the time to the bureau chief of Al Jazeera. I mean, that's sort of like the icing of the cake, isn't it, of how much Israel really wanted to block any information coming out to the world.
Yeah, there has been attempts to impose media censorship, an attempt to impose a media blackout, an attempt to always investigate or to say that the statistics coming from the Palestinian side are not accurate, whether it's the number of Palestinian martyrs or injured or any figures coming from Gaza. They always doubted that, saying these are Hamas figures. So why didn't you allow the entry of foreign journalists or the entry of experts so that the world can tell, can see what's going on? It's always the game of blaming the Palestinians, the game of justifying its attempts to impose media blackout. It doesn't want the world to see the atrocities, the massacres, the crimes. But with the help of local journalists, I think the world was able to see what's going on.
One final question, Yousef, before we go to the break. You said it. The online battle was won by the people of Gaza. The online battle was won by those who really wanted to show the true destruction of the genocide. Do you think that's enough to convince the people, and the role that media has played, whether it's through the commercial side or online side, that finally the world has woken up? One can say it's possibly the case. You see protests happenings from each and every part of the globe. Are you, as a Palestinian, happy that even though over close to 50,000 lives were lost, that this online battle has been won?
Many things should have been done. It's not enough. Of course, the world is sympathizing. Millions of people staged rallies and they are staging workshops, seminars. They do the BDS, the boycott. There are many activities that they can show solidarity, wearing the Palestinian kufiya, waving the Palestinian flag, sharing their activism. But it's not enough because we need the politicians, we need the member of parliaments worldwide to change the way how they deal with the Palestinians, including the United Kingdom, because our misery started from Great Britain in 1917 when they awarded the land of Palestine to the Jewish people who suffered persecution. And Palestinians open their arm to the Jews of Europe, and yet we are being kicked and punished, and under the pretext that it belongs to them 3,000, 5,000, 10 years, 10,000 years ago now saying. And just all these kind of repeated, methods and, justifications and fabrications. No more needs to be done. It's not enough that we won the online battle. Palestinians are not going to stop. Palestinians are using non-violent struggle, peaceful methods. We are not advocating because the West, you see, they have this kind of game. They see Palestinians use armed struggle, they support the resistance, and this resistance called in the West terrorism. So Palestinians, they are not sparing any door, any window to tell the world, look, we are also protesting peacefully, but yet we are being killed like sitting ducks along Gaza border across the West Bank. Even if you are not fighting, even if you are a civilian, a kid, even if you are waving a Palestinian flag, you're still gonna be shot dead by Israelis, or arrested, or provoked, or accused of all sort of things. So Palestinians are peace seekers. Palestinians are using any available means in order to make their voices heard.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with Yousef Alhelou. We are going to be talking about the longevity of the ceasefire and the future of the residents of Gaza. To stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm wrapping up my conversation with the filmmaker and producer of The Phoenix of Gaza, which will, of course, be premiered this week. Yousef, again, shukran so much for making the time for us. Yousef, with your, of course, documentary coming up in the Oscars, of course, Basil Adara has documented what is currently happening in the West Bank with illegal settlers going ahead and claiming land there with his documentary called No Other Land. Documentaries like his, documentaries like yours, how important is this in really shaping the education of the people of Palestine, that this is a land that belongs to them, this is a land that belongs to the natives of the land, and the fact that there's a human aspect in all of this?
Documentation of our struggle is important. It's important to keep a record of our cities, our towns, keep a record of our generations, to show the world, like, we have a rich history, to try to convince them that we are humans. Unfortunately, we have been trying for 7 decades to convince the world that we are human beings. This is very annoying, that they believe the propaganda and the Hasbara campaign from the other side. Whenever they come to the occupied territories, they can tell the difference in terms of treatment. They are being interrogated upon arrival at Ben Gurion Airport. They're given hard time. Why you're coming? Why you're coming to Al-Aqsa Mosque? Why you're coming to Bethlehem? They see the violence of the settlers. They see how Palestinians are bearing this oppression for decades, and they see how hospitable Palestinians, and they see how arrogant the other side. So that's why when pro-Palestinians or visitors, when they see these realities on the ground, they become more attached to Palestine, to Gaza, West Bank. They become pro-Palestinian. And some of them, they go vocal. They cannot stay silent. And they are arrested, they are blacklisted. So this kind of documentation by locals, by foreign filmmakers, it shows the world that there are people struggling miserably. They are aspiring for their self-determination. They are aspiring to be a free nation. Palestine, probably, and Kashmir, the only country in the world that is still under colonization. Palestine is the last colony of the Western Palestine in the Middle East, and this oppression has to come to an end one day. Palestinians are not going to vanish. We are not going to go to the museum. And we have many friends, comrades across the world, in South Africa, in the different continents. Films are being showed and screened. The Western media no longer maintain monopoly on stories. They found themselves obliged to report on what's going on. Social media is on our side. It's a very powerful means. That's why my Instagram account exploded. I've got over 1 million followers, but we are being restricted by Meta. I should have reached tens of millions, but this is the reality on the ground, that they try to suppress our voices, but we will continue to be the voice of the voiceless.
Yousef, a lot of the concerns is with regards to this longevity of the ceasefire that is underway. Of course, there are different phases that are going to occur. It seems Hamas is playing, ball. They're willing to release the captives, of course, given the details of the deal. We've, of course, seen many of the Palestinian hostages, of course, being released also at the same time. And even though it's coming in droves, it's still occurring. But a lot of it comes down to the right side of the Israeli cabinet. And when I mean right, of course, I mean the right wing side of the cabinet, the likes of Ben-Gvir, the likes of Smotrich. These are guys who are out and out warmongers. They really want to see this genocide continue. They want to see this genocide take even further enhancements. And this is where, of course, the concern comes. But from a Gaza resident's perspective, I mean, what is the way forward? Because even though there's a question mark on the ceasefire, they still want to rebuild their lives. And that's something one can admire, isn't it?
Yes, you see the names that you mentioned, they are terrorists because according to an Israeli court, Smotrich was Ben-Gvir was classified as a terrorist. And Ben-Gvir, the security minister, he went to Israeli prisons and jails, and he was instructing the jailers to torture Palestinians. Can you imagine? And they are denied the basic rights, hospitalization, meals, and so on. And Smotrich, the finance minister, he is advocating for the annexation of the West Bank. He is advocating for the forceful migration, displacement of Palestinians of Gaza, saying that we need to exploit Trump's stance on the forceful displacement of Gazans. And Netanyahu is a slave for those fanatics, right-wing thugs. They are thugs. I mean, politics doesn't run like this.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Netanyahu is facing domestic pressure. It's in our favor that he's being pressured by the families of the captives, by the Western community, because he cannot justify his resumption of war. He cannot, convince the world that there is a need for his forces to stay in Gaza. He has failed miserably to rescue the captives by force. Hamas is still powerful on the ground. The resistance is being supported locally. And the world is not convinced from what he says. I think he's hallucinating. He's a psychopath. But the fragile ceasefire is still holding. I think he will do his best in order to sabotage this ceasefire, because he is squeezed in the corner. He's facing accusations from the families of the captives because he didn't do his best. He didn't exert enough efforts to rescue them. His forces killed many of the captors in Gaza, knowing where they are. They were bombed under the Hannibal Directive. And also, he's not happy from the theater, from the show that Hamas is showing during the handout procession. So he's annoyed. He doesn't like to be, his arms are twisted. Hamas is playing psychological warfare, and he is not happy at all from this gradual ceasefire, because he lied to the Israeli society, and he is going to prison because he's the one who spread the justifications of the world about the massacres and the killing of the babies and all these kind of fabrications. And he is trying his best to throw the ball to his opponents. So I hope the ceasefire will hold, but the coming weeks, it's going to be a very thorny road.
Yousef, I've got two questions. I want to try and fit them in the next couple of minutes. At this moment, you see Israel, of course, ramping up its operations in the West Bank, especially we've seen that happening in Jenin. That, of course, is putting another question mark with regards to the ceasefire. You've mentioned something about the Palestinian Authority, and many Palestinians that I speak to really have a lack of trust towards the Palestinian Authority, because it seems to be what many are saying, in bed with the Israeli occupation forces and the Israeli government. With that being said, I mean, from a leadership perspective of Palestine, where is the trust going to come, and how is there going to be a change with regards to that?
I believe that Israel wants to compensate its loss in Gaza by trying to achieve an illusional victory in the West Bank, by trying to crush the resolve and morale of the Palestinians, by trying to provoke.
Yousef, we seem to have lost you there. Are you still with us?
from.
No,
Yes.
shukran, we got you. Continue, please.
Yeah, so Israel trying to compensate its lost ultimate victory in Gaza by achieving an illusional victory in the West Bank, because they have lost internally. They couldn't break the will of the morale of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and also they wanted to annex the West Bank. Of course, the role of the Palestinian Authority somehow contributes to the occupation policies. I know it's very sensitive for Palestinian officials to criticize themselves, and we find it really an abnormal situation when we Palestinians have to put the blame of the Palestinian side. Of course, there's the security collaboration, the exchange of information, but Israel also is trying to weaken the role of the Palestinian Authority. Netanyahu doesn't want the PA to rule Gaza. He doesn't want Hamas to rule Gaza. He doesn't know what he wants. And we understand the Palestinian Authority is being extorted by the West, that you have to do this job, otherwise we're going to cut the financial support. And Israel has been trying to make Palestinians adapt to the salary. Each month they receive this salary. If the Palestinian Authority collapses, then this means tens and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians will have no income. So Israel is playing a dirty game here.
Yousef, I got 1 minute. Just the intention of the Phoenix of Gaza. What is it that you want the world to know in 1 minute?
The intention is to humanize the Palestinians. We are not numbers. We have aspirations. We have dreams. We are creative. We are innovative. Palestinians will never give up their right to be free. We have a rich history, identity, and Gaza are not going to disappear. Gaza will be rebuilt, and it will rise again like the phoenix.
Yousef, absolute pleasure having you on, and of course we hope to have you in South Africa, inshallah, where you can sit with us in studio. Absolute pleasure hosting you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Wa alaikum assalam.
That's Yousef Alhelou, journalist and director, filmmaker and producer of the Phoenix of Gaza. Let's take a look at it one last time. Well, that's all we have for you here on News in Focus. From myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Of course, tomorrow will be a talking point. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.